They found a purple robe, cast it over his shoulders, put a reed in his hand, and bowed down before him. I had to step in one more time and say, "That's enough. Take him back to the governor." So much for his compromise. They wouldn't have it. He asked them what they wanted, and they said it in unison: death. You see, folks, under Roman occupation, the Jews can execute as many pigeons and lambs and bullocks and goats as they like. But to execute a man, that required the governor's seal of approval, an official death sentence for a man with no fault. But Pilate is a politician. And rather than make the decision himself, he put it before the people. And he gave them a suggestion that made me shudder. Either this faultless man from Nazareth or Barabbas. Barabbas, a man whom my men had personally arrested not a week earlier than this for pillaging, stealing, raping, plundering, and murder. Not to mention the treasonous acts against the empire. That's who the governor was going to offer against this faultless man. I thought the case was closed, but that's when I heard the crowd cry out, "Release Barabbas!" I looked at the governor intently. Surely he would not let this criminal free to continue his rampage on Jerusalem. But then the cuffs came off, the ropes were untied, and that dog went back into the crowds free. "What shall I do with Jesus?" the governor asked. "Crucify him!" the mob screamed in return. Crucify him. I knew what this was all about. Those same long-robed priests and their acolytes had filled the crowd with people looking for blood. And that's just what they got. Rather than stand for what he believed in, my governor washed his hands. The Roman eagle bowed to the wishes of a filthy mob. My orders were clear: to lead them to Golgotha. It was midday, and the rays of the sun were beating down on me as I got on horseback. The heat that I was feeling, I knew, had to be even more intense for the prisoners behind me. The loss of blood coupled with the heat. He stumbled, he fell, he stumbled, he fell, he stumbled, he fell. Finally, I had enough, and I found a man in the crowd to carry the beam of the cross all the way up the hill for him. When we finally made it to the top, my men knew their orders. We'd done this hundreds of times before, but I felt sick in the pit of my stomach this time. As they laid his hands out across the crossbeam, and the 5-inch spikes were driven through his wrists, bursting arteries and veins. I looked away. They turned his legs perpendicular to the upright beam, and they drove a 7-inch spike through his ankles and hoisted him into position. Crowds were gathering behind us. My men were gambling for his cloak. But I had been given special instructions from the governor and hung a sign over his head in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. "This is the King of the Jews." I didn't know if it was some historical irony or the governor's sick joke on the priests, but it also made me sick. He hung there. They mocked him. He forgave them. The thieves hung next to him, begged forgiveness. He said, "You'll be with me in paradise." His mother at the foot of the cross with some young man, he told him to look after her. And he thirsted. We gave him some sour wine mixed with water. But then as the day proceeded, it got darker and darker, till he looked up into the heavens and he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? Into your hands I commend my spirit." 3 hours. 3 hours he hung there. He gave up the ghost. "It is finished," he said. But I was not satisfied. I'd seen his suffering go on long enough. That's why I ordered this spear thrust up into his side. He was dead. Most of my life, I have been in the army. I have gladly served the empire and my emperor, and I have been proud to be a part of the military that conquered the world. But at that moment, I was not proud. At that moment, the world didn't seem to matter anymore. All I could feel was loss. I felt as if everything that were good in this universe had been destroyed, and partially by me. That's when I knew that truly this man was the Son of God.